Hello and welcome to another video. This tutorial is a cut down of a live stream following on from my previous Sully video. I'll link that video below along with the free presets I provided there. I'd recommend watching that video before or after watching this one, as this is sort of a part 2. I've also added some overdubs in places to make my explanations clearer. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more content, and turn on the bell notifications if you never want to miss an upload. Let's get into it. We'll start with memories. I think most of the time with these, I don't really have an electronic kick, but I think for this project, I decided to use one. I wonder how much you can actually hear it in the mix. Usually the type of thing I do with kicks, transient shaping, and a little bit of clipping. Doesn't really alter the sound of it too much. I think the reason I did the transient shaping, I mean, it does hit quite hard. Here I felt the kick needed more punch, so reached for a transient shaper. I'd sort of noticed in memories in particular, there was sort of almost like a ghost aiming kick. I've just filtered out the lows of this. The overall drums bus also has a lot of the lows filtered out for that sort of more jungly, I guess, like lack of low end in a lot of the drums. I think I said in the video, a lot of the time that comes more from the basses than it does from the drums. So with the breaks, I don't know if this is the exact arrangement or the breaks that's. I know he definitely uses Think in memories. I don't actually know about Funky Drummer. I just felt like a certain texture lacking when I was only using Think and not, well, just using Think on its own. So I felt like I needed to add something else to kind of, I don't know if beef up's the right word because I've filtered out a lot of the lows on these. Quite subtle, actually, the Funky Drummer. Yeah, you can kind of hear it sounds a bit thin without the Funky Drummer. Quite a sort of usual processing chain that I have on here, like, you know, warm-up lows, drum bus. I find myself using this quite a lot. It's like a dynamic EQ from Neutron. It's kind of like an auto EQ thing that usually sort of like softens the mids and the highs. And then for the Think. Similar chain. Arguably, I could have just put these on this chain, but also the levels are quite low, so I probably would have needed to mess around with these levels to get the same amount of saturation or have the break pushing as hard into these saturation plugins. Often I'll separate the snares out, which is what I've done here. But usually it's to sort of process them in a slightly different way. I don't think I really ended up doing that here. They look identical, these two. Yeah, and then on the group, there's Soothe. I use this. I have a specific preset that I made called Think Break Tam Remover, and yeah, I just use it on the Think Break tambourine. Which I think is useful because it's a bit the tambourine on Think Break can be a bit resonant, and then there's another EQ. Which is kind of dampening the tambourine even more. I couldn't EQ and process my drums exactly like Sully's. Well, I found that pretty challenging, I think I said in the video. So I was going back and like listening and A-Bing with the original track and just trying to get something as close as I could. Got some kind of perk layers as well. This one's, yeah, it's an additional Think tambourine, which is like a technique that you may have seen music videos before where I layer more Think tambourine. Because obviously you have the loop that's part of the break that's just a tambourine, so it's very easy to extract just a tambourine and then use that as like an additional perk element. I panned these high perks and used more drum bus here. Then there's these perks, which are the more tonal stuff, I guess. I think I've put I use Serum Effects phaser. It just has a phaser and a flanger on it. There's monoing here below 500 hertz. Phaser flanger will make the timbale very wide. So I thought it was a comb filter. I hadn't actually heard that directly, but from my investigations later in the project, I started using Infiltrator a lot, and that has comb filters in. So I recommend something like that. Yeah. So there's a section in Memories, I think, where the toms are also playing along with the bass line, but I found it a bit too difficult to notate. I forgot to show this on stream, but the toms have these pitch envelopes on them. Really processing on here. And then, yeah, on the bus. Oh, I put like a match EQ. I was doing this a little bit. So I'd play the track into the match EQ and then put the match EQ on the drums just to try and get the EQ in closer. More the sculptor. You got the warm-up highs. Drum bus. There's glue compressor and a clipper. I think we're kind of done with this one because I looked at everything else in the video. I mean, these drones. I think it's kind of supposed to be like a kind of Juno-y 80s synth. Which Sully likes. It's kind of just like a super saw. with distortion, compression, reverb, EQ. Pretty much it. It's only really the filter cutoff, I think, that's being modulated. And then we've got vinyl doing the warping. There was a free plugin I got recently, which I wanted to use instead of vinyl. Yeah, this is actually this is the other layer. This layer comes from my Underground Currents pack. The drone in Memories seems to have some kind of vocal texture. Oh, is it Spectral plugins? Yeah, that's the one. It's the OC45. I'll link the OCS 45 in the description. But yeah, this has significantly more options and settings than vinyl. Obviously, it's a tape deck emulation as opposed to a vinyl emulation, but it has wild flutter, wild depth, flutter rate, and flutter depth rather than just one control, which is warp. I added a little bit of reverb to all the drums in the project, so they all sound like they're in a similar space. This is Verite. No electronic kick this time. I think the setup for this is fairly similar to the last one. End up layering some aim and snares. As I said, a lot of this stuff is with the drums is more kind of guessworky because this is just the type of stuff that I do generally. You know, I'll like layer an aim and snare with other breaks just to give it a bit more oomph. I'd recommend watching my 140 breaks video to see me construct a breakbeat loop from start to finish. For example, I don't talk about applying grooves to drums in this video, whereas I cover it in depth there. I was struggling to get the same exact snare as Sully though, which was a bit challenging. I think maybe I started using this Think break, which I think is from my zombie video. So it inherently sounds a bit darker, and even though I was pitching it up. I think I'd already processed it in a way that made it sound dark, but it was also working pretty well for the purposes of the video. Got like little ghosty bits. I've done stuff with like parallel soft tube saturation. This is my like old break rack that I used to use for processing breaks. And then yeah, main break. Yeah, we've got Soothe again. EQ is quite similar to the EQ from the last breaks. I used, was it transient shaping I was taking down the sort of higher transients. Presumably I felt they were a bit sharp. Going to start to sort of see a pattern kind of emerge as well with certainly for these earlier ones where I've just sort of done a breaks layer, kick obviously, breaks, and then high perks. Here I have multiple different instances of the Think tambourine. Usually when I do this, I try and pitch one around, because otherwise you can get phase problems if they're at the exact same pitch. And this is probably from a project or something. I don't think this is the OG sample. Debatable how much this tambourine actually does in the context of the whole mix. You notice when I take them all away. Oh, this is just a hat. This is quite a tambourine-y sounding hat. I don't think I noticed the rides until quite late. But yeah, you'll hear ride cymbal samples quite a lot, whether in Sully's tracks, whether it's coming from the break or whether it's a layered ride. See, this is kind of following the kick pattern. Yeah, then we've got the perks, which is, I think the tambars are very similar setup for the last one. We've got rattle as well. There's a lot of almost improvisational elements, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it's jungle, but sometimes it's not necessarily from the breaks themselves. The breaks are sort of quite tightly sequenced. And then you kind of have the improvisational elements coming from the other perks. Yeah, so the verite drums. I'm using the sculptor again. And then we have various types of saturation. Now on to crystal cuts. I've used very similar processing chains for all of the earlier drum groups. This is really similar as well to the last set of drums. I just got in the pattern of making the loops this way, I think. And then once I got to the later tracks, I started kind of struggling a bit more to kind of recreate or to be kind of satisfied in the same way that I was with the earlier drums. Yeah, we got this. I didn't really look at this when it was on one of the previous high perks. This rack is inspired by an object production PDF, which I'll link in the description. It helps to thicken high percussion samples. There's also wider, which is a great plugin for making stuff wide and avoiding phase problems. Yeah, and he's just giving kind of high-end energy. This is actually... These are less close than the fifth sounds, but I just used another choir sound. I think you could kind of... I wonder if this is actually a sample. This Omnisphere patch is sample based, but I wonder if it's actually a sample that he's cut up in Crystal Cuts for the background choirs. You don't need Omnisphere for this choiry vocal chop. I noticed there was some like ambient stuff as well in the background. So I ended up using the vocoder and I think clipping it a bit. It's kind of cool on its own, but it's actually had quite a lot. You don't necessarily hear it at first. But it adds a little bit of sort of high-end interest. As I said, the processing here is very similar to the previous group. This is extant. Where I started using Infiltrator and Glitch 2, which is also similar to Effectrix. Did I put the Match EQ on here twice? This is kind of how I realized that Sully uses filtery stuff. Because as soon as I put on, I mean, there's a lot of like good presets. You can get those through Splice, through like a rent-to-own thing. I like a lot of the beat mashing ones. They can be a bit much, but they give you good starting points for working with breaks and that type of thing. And I think that of all the plugins like this, Infiltrator it's a very good creative tool. I think if you kind of want to take a track maybe in like a new direction, or you feel like you're kind of going through the motions when you're producing a bit, which is something I certainly feel from time to time. I've turned, it's only the comb that's on. But yeah, if I wanted to do if I wanted to go deeper into this, maybe I'd program my own patch and I'd have like a bunch of different combs with different pitches. I mean, these combs move around, but you could just have more stationary ones. But yeah, that's probably how I'd approach it if I was sort of trying to do this again, or maybe more if I was trying to make more original drums with a kind of Sully vibe. I just used like a single aim in this time, I think. I think this original, the bulldozer is already kind of pitched up because it's one from one of the Jungle sample packs. And yeah, I've separated out the snare. I've turned all of these off. So my assumption is I'm just using this for the drive and compression. And then yeah, transient stuff. You can hear that tape stop effect. That's from Glitch 2 because I could use plenty of other tape stops, but like I said, I'm just more familiar with the interface and like how to get the tape stop to do what I want. So I ended up using this as well because it has a slow down, speed up thing and it's all beat synced. What the other option had, like the kilohertz tape stop, you can obviously do tape stop manually as well with audio. There's some sort of looping. Yeah, there's a few things going on here as well. Similar processing to the previous ones. You can hear the comb stuff, maybe more on these, but also I did put phaser on. What I did here is what I basically always do with plugins, especially plugins like these. I just went through the presets until I found something that seemed to work. I don't even think this actually makes that much difference, the phaser. Maybe a little bit, yeah. I mentioned it before, but I did find it very difficult to get the EQ and kind of saturation amounts right, and even like down to the individual samples that Sully's picking, like the particular snares. Did I do any repitching? I mean, there's little like with the extant snares and stuff, there is them going up and down, which maybe is true of some of the other ones as well. Yeah, so there's these two. I've done this for the snares in crystal cuts, and they've been pitched up by 2 or 3 semitones. So for blue, I think it's a similar story to the previous break. I think I've probably used like more snares, maybe, as in different snares from the Think break. I think I've done repitching with these, maybe, yeah, +2, +3, +3. Trying to get a satisfying pattern out of them, but I couldn't 100% emulate the Sully pattern. And then there's like the stretch one. Wasn't 100% happy with this one, but it is doing like an additional stretch, kind of re-triggery thing. Makes it into a sort of a roll, I guess. We have here, we got the loop. I ended up turning the comb off. This is the same preset that I used on the extant drums. Not that I think it sounds bad. I think it's just a bit too much. You could take the mix down. Then we've got Soothe again. Because that sounds horrible. I think for all of these, like I was saying, there's not really much going on in the low end because the bass line is providing that. And that's the video. Please leave any questions or suggestions for future content in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.